Welcome to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good evening. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest tonight is Dusty Pink Chips. Dusty is a successful blackjack player, a former member of the Holy Roller or church team, and we'll be talking to him in a moment. Phil Ivey is in the news again. Not for something new, but for rather something old. We mentioned several times on this show that last year at Crockford's, an exclusive casino in England, Phil Ivey and a Chinese female partner were able to talk the casino into making some changes in the way they dealt a form of baccarat. The casino complied, and Ivey and his partner were able to win many millions of pounds, which translates to 12-something million dollars. The casino has refused to pay, and the case is in litigation. At the Borgata in Atlantic City, apparently Ivey was playing at the casino when the news about Crockford's made headlines. The Borgata then apparently realized that Ivey was doing the same thing with them, so they checked with their lawyers, who concluded that Ivey broke New Jersey law by doing this. Now the casino is suing Ivey for some $9.6 million, along with Jamaica, who is the manufacturer of the flawed cards that Ivey exploited, and Ivey's Chinese woman associate, if they can find her. Although I don't know specific section of the New Jersey gaming law that the Borgata claims Ivey broke, from a distance it doesn't seem like the Borgata has much of a chance here. Richard, what do you think about this?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about this, actually. But first I wanted to just check with you on the timing of this. Are you sure that the Borgata incident happened after the Crockford's incident? Because I thought it happened before.
I was listening to a interview put out by Bluff Poker Magazine, and during that interview, it seems as though Ivey made 3 or 4 appearances at the Borgata starting in 2012, and on the last appearance he was playing at the Borgata in 2013 when the news came out about Crockford's, and that was the last time they've seen him at Borgata.
Okay, so he had done the initial plays prior. Anyway, so I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, everybody keeps calling this edge sorting, which is really the wrong term. Edge sorting referred to back at least 60 years or more, maybe as much as 100 years ago. Edge sorting was something that cheats would do, where they would buy dozens of packs of cards, and they would go through the cards and sort them so that all of a certain kind of cards were cut along the borders in a certain way. And so they literally were sorting the cards to produce a marked deck that they could combine, and then without having marked them themselves, they could identify whatever particular cards they wanted to. So edge sorting is the wrong term. What he was doing was turning the cards, or orienting the cards. That's the first thing. But the second thing is I just am baffled by this lawsuit, because I think it's ridiculous. Every article I see either accuses him of cheating or asks, is this cheating? And it just seems that the casinos now, this is their strategy. If you win $5,000 or $10,000, you're an advantage player. If you win $1 million, you're a cheat. And Ivy asked for conditions, and it was up to the casino to say yes or no. We will allow you to play this way or not. All the casino had to do was say, no, we won't give you these conditions. So, by the casino's logic, should they now go back and sue Don Johnson? Because Don Johnson said, hey, I want a 20% rebate, and then he beat him for millions of dollars. So now should they go back and say, oh, well, we didn't think you'd win? I mean, it's ludicrous. Ivy never touched the cards. He didn't turn the cards. The casino did it. So, I mean, lawyers, of course, the lawyers for Borgata are going to say, yes, we should do this because they have a financial interest in billing a lot of hours. But I don't see how they can have any hope of winning this case. And I think Ivy should countersue for defamation. The casinos are taking these free rolls, or what look like free rolls, where they can just try to not pay, right? If we win, great. If we don't win, we're just not going to pay. So I think there needs to be some punishment for that, and I think Ivy should countersue.
Well, it seems like you might be mixing up the cases. In Crockford's, he has not been paid, and he is suing them.
Yes, yeah, I'm talking about at Borgata.
At Borgata, he has been paid. He has the money, and Borgata says, we want it back.
Right, but I think he should now, they're suing him to get the money back, and I think he should countersue and say, hey, you can't just call me a cheat across the media, across the United States. Clearly it's bad for his image, right? For people to be questioning whether he's cheating here.
Well, that's true. So, there will be people who don't get by the headlines of saying famous poker player Phil Ivey accused of cheating. So right. There will be people who don't get by that.
We have Bob Nersessian on next week. I'd like to ask him if he thinks Ivy would have a reasonable case if he sued for defamation.
Good. We have lots of things to ask Nersessian, and that's certainly one of them. Good. All right. Let's talk to our guest, Dusty Pink Chips. He's been playing blackjack for several years out of the state of Washington area. He's traveled all over the country playing blackjack and has a number of interesting tales to tell us. Dusty Pink Chips, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
All right. First of all, briefly, how did you get started playing blackjack, and how did you become involved with the church team?
I started playing blackjack after I taught my mom to play poker when I was a teenager. She started going to the casino in town and learned blackjack, and so she taught me how to play blackjack, even the basics of card counting.
Oh, your mom knew that?
Yeah. Yeah, the very basics. I couldn't call her an advantage player, but she knew running divisor true and some deviations, I think.
And how did you get involved with the church team?
I had been laid off from my work as an electrician and was playing blackjack. And I was playing for a couple of weeks before I had a nice big win that I felt like I could brag about. And so I told my brother about it, and he, at the time, was a sound guy for a worship band at the church we attended, and mentioned it to the worship pastor, who said, oh, Dusty should talk to my bassist because he does that too, and he's looking to hire some folks. So
that would have been Colin.
What was your reaction when you heard that?
When I couldn't believe it. I felt like I just won the lottery or something, because it's something I'd heard about. I'd heard about these teams, like legends, but never thought I would ever have even an opportunity to try to test out for one. So
I have to say, if somebody said, "Oh yeah, the bass player in the church band runs a blackjack team," I would have been skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I was in the same church, and I was playing blackjack, so it seemed reasonable enough.
And how did that go? That was Colin, I take it, or?
Yeah, that was Colin, and so we arranged a meeting in the green room behind the stage there at the church, and in between services, I went back there and we introduced ourselves, and he asked me what I would do with a soft 18, and I completely botched it. That's all I remember. I didn't have even the basic strategy down really well enough to impress him, but he took me under his wing, and I started testing and training for the team, and it took a while, but eventually I tested out in, I think it was early May 2006.
Now, I heard some story about the first time you won, you felt incredibly guilty about having won money from the casino and went to blow it back.
Yeah, it wasn't the first time I won, but it was my first really big win. I won like $1,300 or something, and this is before the team. So I was like, certain that they were on to me. Plus, I just made $1,300. It's not like it's going to stop. I'm a professional blackjack player now. So yeah, I went over to 3-card poker. I had no idea what 3-card poker even was or how to play it. The pit boss had to explain it to me, and I gave back like $300. And then
so
ate my
your
comp
thought
meal.
at that point was, oh, this is easy. The money's just going to roll in.
Oh yeah, it's just going to keep coming. Yeah, I hadn't the slightest clue of what expected value was or how blackjack actually works over the long term.
Or bankroll requirements or any minor thing like that.
No. Yeah, I was totally clueless. So just very lucky.
So apparently you've been kind of famous for finding 3 hours from anywhere gold mines. So tell us about some of these.
This always happened unplanned. What would typically happen is I'd fly to, a place like Palm Springs or whatever, and try to play there after 3 consecutive weeks of my teammates being there. And so as soon as I whip out the Washington State ID and lots of money, they're all over me and I'm flyered and I can't get any play. So I just Google casinos, Google Maps on my phone, and start kind of researching them, trying to find out what kind of games they had, and then get on the road. And sometimes it worked really nicely, and I found really awesome places that they were just clueless. And I could play for not just hours and hours and hours, but hours and hours every day for like 3 days straight. And then sometimes it was just kind of a mess, just a wreck. You walk in and it turns out they closed their blackjack table or whatever. So it's kind of hit and miss.
What kind of average did you have between finding the gold mines and finding the dry holes, so to speak?
Well, it's almost like labor pains, like a woman forgets the labor pains when she's got the baby. So it's easier to remember the gold mines. So I'm afraid I might underestimate how many of those dry holes there are. But if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say probably 1 in 3 casinos that I would, drive out to would actually be in the mood to tolerate the kind of play that the team required.
And basically you were betting table max wherever you went?
Yeah.
And did you ever try to sort of stay under table max I don't know, I found that, for example, if the limit is 1,000, I find that sort of 2 hands of 800 flies way better than 2 hands of 1,000.
Yeah. think that you're probably right on that. But I would typically just make it simple. I hated doing results, and on the team we had to be really specific about all the conditions and what kind of spread you were playing. And so I think I could have been a lot more sophisticated with stepping it up and not quite hitting table max. But mostly I just went to the max.
How did you guys handle did you use players cards or not, and how did you handle being a refusal? And
being a refusal?
Yeah, did you guys use players cards, or did you play as a refusal?
It was up to the player, and I would just use my discretion. Obviously, if I'm in a place where I've been backed off, I would not give them my ID or player's card. But in the beginning, I was hearing all kinds of amazing stories about, penthouse suites that were comped with, a pool in them and stuff like that. So I was definitely trying to get comps in the beginning, but, especially in Vegas, once I got recognized and kind of flyered, that was pretty much over. So, typically now I'm one of those refusals.
And do you find that you're still able to play as a refusal, even betting, multiple thousands of dollars?
Yes. It depends on the place for sure. And in Vegas, I couldn't ever stay long anywhere after my first or second trip. I wasn't going to be just camping out anywhere.
No, but what about when you go to one of these places that's in the middle of nowhere and you find a game and they're letting you play?
If they're not a chain that's if they're not like Harrah's or something, then I'm golden. But if they are a chain, what I'll do is play unrated until if I tank and I'm in for over $10,000 and you got to give them your ID anyway, then I'm like, oh yeah, can I get a player's card? And by that time, it's been
you're already stuck a
successful
lot, so
for exactly. And they're like, oftentimes they'll just keep letting me play.
Periodically you get tapped on the shoulder and say, we don't want your action anymore. And other players have had when that happens to them, they basically been taught to say nothing and leave the casino. But you apparently have a different strategy. They go, we think you're a card counter, and you go, yep, I'm a card counter, and we think you're an advantage player. Yep, I can beat you, and just like spill the beans, and which is most players don't choose to do that. So, how does this difference arise?
Well, I would never volunteer any information. But if they ask, if they say, typically they don't ask. They just say, you're too good for us, and I'm like, okay. But if there's any kind of back room situation and they want to know what I'm doing and why, then it's all. I don't bother trying to hide at that point because they obviously know, and I'm not a good enough actor to convince them otherwise. I don't think there's a lie I could tell that would get them to unback me off or really believe that I wasn't playing cards, or playing advantage blackjack. And so at that point, it seems more risky to lie than to just be forthcoming and honest. And you can always refuse to go in the back room, though. I mean, you had one story about sort of resenting the fact that you hadn't been back roomed.
Yeah, I mean, why? Tell me about that. About resenting not being backroomed and getting backroomed.
I see it as a sign of accomplishment, and it's just one of those things where so many people you play with are so frustrated and angry about not being able to win this game because the odds are not in their favor. And all of a sudden, you have like a head of security acting that way, where it's like, this just isn't fair, and he's angry, or it just completely switches it, and turns the game completely against the house. And if they're willing, like, to take the time to yank me into a back room and have a conversation with me, I'm happy to, like, spell that out for them. And oftentimes it, I can tell most of the people in there are not hostile. They're, like, this is making their week. So,
did you guys never file any lawsuits and sue casinos for backrooming you, or?
No, it was, I don't know. It never seemed worth it. There was one time, my first time getting backroomed, where my buddy wanted to. The guy who was with me, because he was not happy about going into the back room, and they pushed him in. And so we called the sheriff afterwards, and it was just like, oh, they're a tribal casino. It's sovereign land. You were counting cards, so there's nothing you can do about it. Like, he wouldn't even file a report. So.
Yeah, it's... You're probably not going to have much success suing a tribal casino.
Yeah.
But.
One time I heard that one of these guards, security guards, actually asked you for a bribe. How did that happen?
That was interesting, and I think he would say it would have been more of a gift, because I wouldn't have been receiving anything for it. And also, he said that he would pay me back. So it was
so it was a loan.
Yeah, exactly. It was a place I played a lot, regularly, like probably 40 hours a month. And so everybody there kind of knew me. And I went outside one time to smoke my pipe, and this security guard came out, and I knew him, and whatever. I was just talking to him, and he said, he was tight on cash, and could he borrow $500? He'll pay me next month when I come out to this casino. And I told him I had a policy not to give money to anyone at the casino. My wife made me promise that I had stopped giving money away at the casino, so sorry. And then, lo and behold, I came back the next month, and he was gone. And I asked them, like, where did so-and-so go? Did he quit? They're like, yeah, he moved to Arizona. So I think he was not going to pay me back on that.
Now,
so when you guys were at your height, I mean, what was your maximum bet? I mean, if you were in a place with a 10,000 limit, were you betting two hands at 10,000?
No. The most I ever bet was 2 by 3,000, and that was pretty fun. And it was only the one time, and I lasted half an hour at good old Barona. And got backed off, and I totally forgot to ask them if they would put me in the Blackjack Hall of Fame, because I saw it on the way in. I'd never heard of it before, but I saw all the pictures on the wall, and was like, oh, sweet. When they back me off, I'm going to be like, hey, you can't back me off without putting me in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. But I'm sure they wouldn't have.
I'm sure, too.
Gotta...
You got to go to be invited to Max's party and then win a vote.
Yep. So that was fun. The guy who backed me off did say that it was fun to watch and very impressive. So
that actually sounds like Max. Now you did a lot of trips when you traveled with your wife and small child. That would seem to cramp your style when you're on the road, I would think. Maybe not. How did that work?
It definitely had pros and cons. I really like my family, so that was a pro. And I hate traveling away from them, so that was really nice. Just to have somebody to come home to after kind of a lonely casino grind environment. But there were drawbacks too. You can't sleep in your car with your wife and kid. I mean, you shouldn't.
No, they frown on that.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but you have to get them a room.
Right. Yeah. So that's oftentimes the first thing I had to do. I couldn't just shoot off straight to a casino. I'd have to go and get the family settled in, especially if we were landing in the evening, or if I'm playing a casino that doesn't have a hotel that they'll comp me a room to. But my wife has all her own stories about killing time just wandering back and forth in casinos waiting for me to get a hotel comp. So...
Now, you've been arrested several times, right?
Nope, just the once.
Okay. And that was that the FBI or the police that arrested you?
That was the police. I had found one of these gold mines and won a bunch. And after long enough on the church team, all $100 bills started to look the same, even though they're not. And so when they cashed me out, I received a lot of marked bills that had red ink from an ink pack because they were involved in a robbery. So apparently somebody successfully laundered this money through this casino. But I got these none the wiser. And then on my next trip, kind of went on a losing streak. In my first session, I was playing maybe 4 hours, and I noticed that they stopped dropping the money, which was kind of weird. Just for a little bit, they wouldn't drop it, and then the pit boss would come by and be like, yeah, you can drop it. But, I got the tap on the shoulder, and, I thought I was just getting back roomed. So I went along with the guy happily enough, and when we get into the freight elevator, I saw a gun on the hip of a couple of the security guards that were in there. I was like, uh-oh. And looked at their badges, and sure enough, these are not security guards. These are not rent-a-cops. These are the real deal. So we went into this little dungeon. Well, I guess it was just a back room. But and they asked me if I knew why I was there, and I never like to say yes or no, because you never really know in a casino what they know or what they think they know. And so I said maybe, and they said, you are in possession of a large amount of stolen $100 bills, and you're under arrest. And I was like, really? It completely took me by surprise, but they handcuffed me right there, and then I sat there for like hours, just with all sorts of really just felt like paperwork going on. But yeah, at that point, I just told them everything they needed to know. And I asked the cops when I got a discreet moment not to tell the casino that I was counting cards.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that.
You can trust the cops to keep their word.
Yeah, and so they're like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, I laid it on pretty thick. I was like, this is my livelihood. And then sure enough, as we roll out to go to jail, because I stayed at the casino in that room for it felt like 4 hours. But when I was in the back of the squad car, the guy was like, yeah, they asked me to tell you that they're going to ban you for counting cards. I'm like, they didn't know I was counting cards, jerk. But anyways, sheesh, I spent the night in the bullpen, and
the bullpen?
the bullpen, or the drunk tank. I didn't have my own cell. They just kind of put me in a room with all the other riffraff that they picked up off the street. So that was exciting. There were 11 guys in there. I knew where they were all sitting at all times until I finally fell asleep. I did get a little bit of sleep in jail, but it was wild because when I told them that my wife was in town, they said, I asked if I could call her, use my phone call, and they were like, no. And I was like, oh, that sucks. So I had no idea how far this was going to go, and if this misunderstanding was going to lead to my wife being taken into custody, and then what happens to my kid. And yeah, I was really freaked out. So I made a solemn vow. Not really. I just decided then and there that I was going to quit counting cards forever because it was too risky.
Did you promise God?
No, I didn't. I promised. I kind of just decided. I was like, I am not going to do this anymore. This is too risky. But
and that promise lasted how long?
Well, when I got out of jail, the sun was shining and my family was fine, and I still needed to pay rent. So I drove straight to a casino after getting some sleep.
So
it didn't quite last 24 hours.
You know, when you say you never quite know why they're taking you to the back room, I had a friend back in the early 80s who had a disguise where he would dress up like what he envisioned a coke dealer to be. And he was playing in Las Vegas, and he would pull out this little bottle and pretend to snort cocaine at the blackjack table. And when he left the table, security came and got him, dragged him to the back room. And it turned out they thought he was a coke dealer, and that's why they had backroomed him. And he said, no, I'm a card counter, and this is all a disguise. And, don't tell the casino, don't tell the guys in the pit, but, there's no cocaine. And they actually eventually believed him, and they called the pit and said, that guy that we backroomed, he says that it's all a disguise and that he was doing it because he's a card counter. And the pit bosses laughed and said, tell him to come on back. He can play all he wants.
That is awesome.
Yeah, although, he didn't go back. He figured there's no way they're going to let him win any money at that point.
Oh, that's amazing. I would have gone back. That's so amazing. Because, you got to be careful that your disguise doesn't attract too much of attention. You kind of want people to just write you off.
Right.
But if they can get you for something else, yeesh.
You mentioned that you really benefited, and I think this is actually a really good idea. You mentioned that you really benefited from going on a trip in the beginning with a more experienced team member. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just one trip. I went on 3 or 4 trips with him, and he was a really great player, for one thing. But he also just knew all the ropes. and was like, you know, Ben and Colin won't teach you this stuff, but you gotta carry your money this way or whatever. Little stuff like that. And then also just how to cope with losing, and how to really squeeze all the EV out of an area. So that was good. I remember too, we actually just became friends. So it was cool to it kind of took the edge off of being on a trip. And so we would try to have some sort of fun on trips. He said one thing Ben had taught him was work hard, play hard. So,
so what did that mean?
That means when you're doing blackjack, just crush it. Work hard. Play the long hours and drive the extra miles. And when you're all done, go to a water park.
You know, I think I really agree with that. I know too many people who go on these blackjack trips and never see anything. You know, they'll go to Europe and travel from country to country to country and never see anything other than the inside of a casino or, you know, the pension where they're staying. So, yeah, I agree. I think you really have to take time out to, you know, to enjoy where you are and, you know, see places and do things.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I kind of got into a rut of not doing that when I was on my own or just, you know, with my family. But, man, my most memorable trip to Vegas had nothing to do with blackjack. I mean, we were there for work, but we went to Red Rock Canyon, and it was just amazing. So.
There was this movie called The Holy Rollers about Ben and Colin and the various other members of the team, and your face was in that movie. Now, after that, were you ever recognized in a casino and they go, aren't you a member of the church team? That ever happen?
That has happened one time. And fortunately, it was a player who recognized me. Came up to me and said, "Is your name Rusty?" And I said, "No." And he was like, "Oh, because you look like a guy from a Christian gambling movie I saw." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, my name starts with a D." I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm Eric." And we talked for like 40 minutes and just sat there playing, and it was really cool.
That's funny. You mentioned a story where you went to one of these places to play, and your host told you before you played that they were planning on barring you?
Yes. Yeah, and that was really nice because it meant that instead of going straight to the blackjack table, I went up and used the internet in my comped room to plan where I was going to play that trip instead of that place. Yeah. And then I did go down and let them have the gratification of backing me off. Plus, I just wanted to see if it would actually happen. And sure enough, yeah, they backed me off. When I asked him why, I asked him, you know, is it because I won so much? And he said, it could be that, or it could be that you played 23 hours in one day. And I don't know why they would mind that, unless it just looks like desperate working-class card counter, which it was.
Are you sure that you're sharp after 22 hours of playing?
No. I would say those are not the proper circumstances to play in for sure. But I kept winning, and I was super desperate for hours. I had this was one of those places where I just drove, I think it was like 5 hours. Nobody on my team had ever been there, and I go here, and they're letting me play. After, the first part of my trip just getting backed off everywhere because I've been flyered. So, yeah, I would not recommend it. That's like the whole taking your unemployment check to the casino sort of thing that worked out for me, but is not recommended.
Do you have any unusual stories about being backed off, or being backed off in unusual ways?
One time I got backed off on a voicemail.
A voicemail.
Yeah.
That'll teach you to have an answering machine.
I know. It was so depressing because it was my first trip in Vegas, and my goal was I want to be the very best card counter that no one has ever heard of. So I took a spotter along with me and got comped a nice suite, and it was working. It was excellent. It was awesome. And I made a little bit of money there. I only played 2 shoes, and they were all over me with the hosts. And so, I gave them all my information and my cell phone number and all that. And then I called the session. We had a signal for, we're done now, let's go to the next place. And walked out and found out later that my spotter, instead of cashing out, he was right in the middle of a positive count, so he upped his bet. And it wasn't much. The EV was probably like $12. But it was enough for them to notice him, and he'd been backed off and banned everywhere in Vegas. So they rewound the tapes and found me and called me on my cell phone and said, yeah, you're no longer welcome here, and your hotel suite's been canceled. Which was like the worst. I saved it on my iPhone, but it broke. So I'm not sure if I'll ever have that. But I really wanted to keep that voicemail.
I had one of those. Actually, I answered the phone, and it was the casino manager calling me at dinner to tell me not to come into the casino anymore. Yeah, that was not fun. And at the time, this was many years ago, and the guy's name was Howard Grossman, and he invented the game Super Fun 21. And before he was a casino manager, he was a player, and we had been friends. But I had gone into, he was the casino manager at the Nevada Palace, which was out on Boulder Highway. And I found out his days off, so I went in on his days off and I played. And then when he came back in, I guess somebody had recognized me and they told him I had played and I won some money. And yeah, he called me. I was like, Howard, it's dinner and you're calling me at my house, But
that's messed up.
Yeah.
Now, Colin and Ben still teach people how to play, and they do. Are you at all involved in that educational process with them?
No, I did some training while I was on the team, but none since.
And are you still playing, or have you moved on to other things?
Here and there, I still play.
As part of a team, or now you're playing on your own?
Oh, no, just solo. Just on my own, which is nice because it doesn't attract anywhere near the kind of attention that playing with that big team money always attracted.
Very good. So we're going to do some commercials now, Dusty, and if you can stick around, if we have time, we're going to ask you how you got the name Dusty Pink Chips. Now, that's a nickname that it sounds like Breast Cancer Awareness Week or something. I'm not sure what pink chips sound like. So if you have time to stick around, please do.
I'd love to.
All right. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. That's more than anybody else has. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 2,000 video poker points. You get to spin the virtual wheel, which is right on your machine. You can do this up to 4 times a day. The average on this has been about $14 per spin, which is 0.7%. So assuming you're playing NSU, which is an even game after cashback, the $2 machines, you're making $60 an hour. This is limited to $8,000 coin in a day, but and 3 days a week. But it's a decent play. Wednesdays, that Monday points, you'll get a South Point logo polo shirt. They usually have double points on major holidays there, and Easter, coming up this weekend, is a major holiday. Now, as of yesterday when I called, they go, nope, we're not having it. So at a minimum, I'm going to go early on and play with 8,000 points to get the virtual wheel spin 4 times, and I'll check to see if I'm getting single or double points. If I'm getting double points, I'll stay longer. But if I'm not, I'll move on. At the Palms, on Fridays, they have 7 o'clock must be there to win drawings. Each week, $10,000 is given away to 10 winners. You earn 5 times entries Fridays and Saturdays, 8 to midnight, 2 times entries Sundays and Tuesdays. The Play for Points, they used to be called PEWs, now they're Play for Points. Now they may be earned Monday through Friday, and you can save them up and redeem them. Till the end of the month, you can earn Albertsons and Walgreens gift cards. The rate is 0.25% for video poker, making it equivalent to double points, although a few of the gift cards have slightly different rates than the 0.25%. Videopoker.com remains the best place to practice a wide variety of games, including Quick Quads, Ultimate X, Extra Draw, Frenzy Poker, Hyper Bonus, and many others. Often these games are the best returning games in a casino, and you need practice to make sure you know how to play. The weekly contests for this week are Ultimate X, Multi-Strike Poker, and Wheel Poker. Wheel Poker is a 6 coins per line game where you get to spin the wheel every time you get a 4 of a kind. The values on the wheel vary between 100 and 2,000 credits and average 428. The wheel adds between 0.4 and 0.7% to the base game, which is pretty good. You have to learn a new strategy to play the game. If you were playing bonus poker, for example, instead of assuming that aces paid 400, you now need to assume they pay 828, which adds the value of the spin. And similar quad 2s, 3s, and 4s, instead of paying 200, you assume they pay 628, and you make the other adjustment. This will change several plays. For example, it may well mean that when you dealt a full house, you throw away the pair and just hold the 3 of a kind and hope for the quads. All right. Next week, our guest will be Bob Nersessian. We're looking forward to this. I assume, Richard, you've been you've been saving all the questions we've said, we got to ask Bob this next time we're on.
We do have a lot to ask Bob, and also he's one of those guests that a lot of our listeners like to ask questions of. So, you can send your questions to gamblingwithanedge at gmail.com, or you can put them on the Gambling with an Edge Facebook page. I do know that just today, Bob had a major win against a casino in Mesquite, and one of the things I'm really pleased about is that the people who won the case did not the settlement. They refused to settle with a non-disclosure agreement, so they are allowed to talk about the case. And in addition to Bob talking about it next week, we are going to have the 2 players that were detained. They're going to be on a future episode, maybe in a month or so. So I'm excited about that, because it's nice to have players able to talk about the lawsuits that they won against these casinos, and the more people that sue them and win, the more people will do it, and the casinos will stop, detaining people.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to find out some of the cases that lost, meaning players need to adjust to that as well. All right, good. And I promise to remember to ask him about Phil Ivey. And you can remember the others. All right, Dusty Pink Chips. When I played, pink chips were 50-cent pieces. This doesn't sound like calling yourself Dusty Pink Chips doesn't sound to be a badge of honor. How did this happen?
It was, we had, at first we just had a Yahoo group on the team where we would all talk and share stories and all that. And then we got a bona fide website, and I had to get like a name. And I didn't want to make it my name in case we got hacked. So I wanted to go by Pink Chip, and Mr. Pink Chip, actually.
Mr. Pink Chip, sir.
Yeah. That was a kind of a hybrid of I liked the character Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs, and that whole tipping discussion that he has with everybody, just because of the whole casino dealer tipping issue. And then, in addition to that, the casino that I trained in had those 50-cent pieces, bright, hot pink 50-cent pieces. And so there was somebody else on the team that was calling himself Mr. Like Black Chip or something like that. And so I was like, I'm going to go the other way and just be like Mr. 50-cent piece. And somebody said, oh, there's a rapper that calls himself 50 Cent. And I was like, well, then I'm in good company. So, yeah.
All right, so we got a minute left, but apparently later on you found not all pink chips are worth 50 cents.
Indeed. Yeah, most of the places in our neck of the woods up here in the Northwest, pink chips are $500 chips.
Uh-huh. So calling yourself Pink Chips was bragging. And,
in the end, turned out to be kind of overestimating myself rather than understating myself.
Oh, well. Good. We've been talking to Dusty Pink Chip. We still have a minute to go. And
is this the Twilight Zone?
This is the stall time, Richard. One of the other things we're going to be talking to Bob Nersessian about next week is there was this traffic stop in Arizona a month or so ago where they found $400,000 in the trunk. And we need to talk more about what you should and shouldn't do. Bob has gone over some of those rules in earlier shows, but not all of our listeners keep all of our shows archived. So reviewing what you should and shouldn't do and what is legal and what isn't legal at a traffic stop, I think is something we all can use.
Important stuff. Also, future shows, we have Richard Marcus coming up again.
All right. Thank you very much, Dusty. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.